tonight.
We shot it down.
The U.S. downing of an Iranian drone, sending ripples through the region.
And that chant, now a campaign issue.
No, stop. Speak up, man. Not after the fact.
With Democrats taking to the 2020 presidential trail, targeting the president and his supporters.
They have a moment of silence, and Buzz Aldrin celebrates communion.
And 50 years since man first set foot on the moon. The story of communion and prayer in space.
There'll be no need to leave the country.
And we asked the Secretary of State his take on why fewer refugees fleeing religious persecution are able to come into the United States. And a flag comes home. How the bullet-riddled banner made it through D-Day and back to the United States.
All that and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Iran strikes again, and this time at one of America's allies. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. Less than 24 hours after the U.S. announced that it brought down an Iranian drone, and Iran denied it. An admission tonight coming from the regime. Just hours ago, Iran announced that it detained a British oil tanker.
The Islamic Revolutionary Guard says it seized the Stena and Piro after the ship violated international laws in the Strait of Hormuz, an area that has been a hotbed of activity during months of mounting tension. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips has the latest from the Middle East. Eric?
John, Jenna, the seizure of the British oil tanker comes at a curious time, just hours after a British court decided to extend the detention of an Iranian tanker for breaching sanctions, and just a day after an uptick in tensions when the U.S. reportedly brought down an Iranian drone. 2 days, 2 issues with 2 ally nations. From the Oval Office Friday, the president made it clear that he is not worried about what Iran will do next after this latest strike.
We have the greatest ships, most deadly ships. We don't want to have to use them, but they're the most deadly ships ever conceived. And we are not, we hope for their sake they don't do anything foolish. If they do, they will pay a price like nobody's ever paid a price.
Reports Thursday that the USS Boxer brought down an Iranian drone over the Strait of Hormuz has everyone wondering what effect it will have on an already strained relationship.
Ignoring multiple calls to stand down and was threatening the safety of the ship and the ship's crew. The drone was immediately destroyed.
But in an interesting twist, Iran is denying that it even happened. Its deputy foreign minister tweeting, "We have not lost any drone in the Strait of Hormuz, nor anywhere else. I am worried the USS Boxer has shot down their own unmanned aerial system by mistake."
It went down. And the fact that Foreign Minister Zarif either didn't know or lied about it, I can't account for it. It happened.
Iran acts irresponsibly in international waters all the time. They finally learned the lesson.
Iran expert Bahnan bin Talablu says the increased sanctions against Iran are working, and the increased aggression from Tehran is the regime's response.
I would say, in fact, stay the course. Increase the sanctions and don't blink. Iran's goal is to get America to swerve. America should get Iran to swerve first.
The U.S. might begin to see increasing European support against Iran after Iran's admitting to seizing the British tanker. Until recently, the U.S. has taken action against Iran largely without the backing of its European allies who were fearful of conflict.
Now that they're calling Iran's violations actual violations, what are they going to do about it? Will they collapse the deal from within? Will they join the U.S. in a sanctions campaign?
And just moments ago, CBN News learned that a second British oil tanker, has been seized by Iran. Now, Talablu says while European allies have pushed for greater diplomacy when it comes to dealing with Iran, he says diplomacy is only good if it's productive and not used as stall tactics to hopefully wait out this U.S. administration. He says the U.S. must make sense of Iran's strategy, meet metal with metal responsibly, and extend a hand for diplomacy the entire time.
All right, Eric Phillips, thank you very much. Well, President Trump has named his pick to head up the Labor Department, Eugene Scalia.
He's the 55-year-old son of the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. CBN's White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us with the details. Ben, why Scalia? Well, John, Jenna, President Trump said Gene Scalia has led a life of great success. He made the announcement via Twitter, saying Gene is highly respected, not only as a lawyer, but as a lawyer with great experience working with the labor and everyone else. He will be a great member of the administration that has done more in the first 2.5 years than perhaps any administration in history. Now, this news comes less than a week after Trump announced that Alex Acosta is resigning as labor secretary over his role in brokering a plea deal with multimillionaire Jeffrey Epstein more than a decade ago. John, Jenna?
And Ben, how did this nomination even come about?
Well, Jenna, we're hearing that Senator Tom Cotton was one of the people who recommended Scalia to the president. On Thursday, Scalia was seen right here behind me at the White House for an interview with President Trump. Apparently, he was impressed. Scalia is currently a partner in a Washington law firm. He served as solicitor in President George W. Bush's administration and at one point worked for the Department of Justice.
Ben, we're right up against the debt ceiling. That's going to dominate the conversation soon. What's the president's take on this?
Well, today the president said hopefully we are in good shape with the debt ceiling. But as you know, John and Jenna, the U.S. national debt is at $22.5 trillion and climbing. Today he said we can never play with it when referring to negotiating the debt ceiling with lawmakers. Take a listen.
I said, I remember to Senator Schumer and to Nancy Pelosi, would anybody ever use that to negotiate with? They said, absolutely not. That's a sacred element of our country. They can't use the debt ceiling to negotiate. And don't forget, President Obama, during his 8 years, he doubled the debt.
I've spoken with the president's former economic advisor, Stephen Moore, about this, and he says government spending needs to get under control in an effort to help bring down that debt ceiling. John, Jenna?
All right, Ben Kennedy for us at the White House. Thank you, Ben. Well, 2020 Democratic presidential candidates are turning a tweet from the president attacking 4 progressive Democratic congresswomen and chants of send her back at a presidential rally into a campaign issue.
For more on that, we now turn to CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson.
2020 Democrat presidential candidates are keeping the chant controversy alive on the campaign trail by calling out the president and standing up for Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, a Somali refugee and focus of the chant.
I never would have believed that we would have a president of the United States who was such an overt racist.
Senator Bernie Sanders and other top Democrat candidates are turning the chant into a campaign issue.
Everybody who thinks that this is just Trump and it's going to go away, our children are listening.
The moment in question came just days after Trump's tweet suggesting 4 minority congresswomen, including Omar, quote, go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came. While Trump stands by his tweet, he's disavowing the chant.
I was not happy with it. I disagree with it. But again, I didn't say that, they did.
But standing up for the people in the crowd.
Those are incredible people. Those are incredible patriots. But I'm unhappy when a congresswoman goes and said, I'm going to be the president's nightmare. She's going to be the president's nightmare. She's lucky to be where she is.
And he's doubling down on his attacks on Omar.
I'm unhappy with the fact that a congresswoman can hate our country. I'm unhappy with the fact that a congresswoman can say anti-Semitic things.
Meanwhile, in Minnesota, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar was greeted with a hero's welcome at the airport.
It sure feels good to be home.
Senator Marco Rubio, who called the tweet wrong and chant grotesque, says he's over the drama.
People are tired of this game. You have to immediately respond, pick a side between these two. It's a game I'm not going to play. It's distracting us from the important things that this country needs to be focused on, and I'm not playing this game anymore.
Adding that no one should question whether Omar and the other 3 congresswomen Trump seemingly targeted are fully American, just like him.
But they're also political bullies. They go around attacking people, calling other Democrats just like Southern segregationists, But when you hit them back, it's because they're women of color.
Many Republican lawmakers felt uncomfortable and disturbed by the chant. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy told reporters it has no place in our country, but thinks it's unfair to hold the president accountable for the audience's words. Back to you, John and Jenna.
Thanks, Abby. Well, to election 2020, we now have the lineup for the second Democratic debate, and it looks like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will meet once again on stage. CNN divided the field of 20 candidates into two groups that will take the stage on back-to-back nights. In the first group, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Pete Buttigieg are the highest polling candidates, and on night two, Biden, Harris, and Cory Booker top the list. In the first debate, a clash over race between Biden and Harris became a major sticking point. Debate 2 is July 30th and 31st.
And here with us now are Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and commentator for the Chicago Tribune, Clarence Page, and Julia Manchester, congressional reporter for The Hill. Julia, let's start with you. The debate draw was last night. It looks like we may have a repeat of Harris versus Biden in round 2.
We're probably going to have a repeat. I don't know if Harris is necessarily going to go after Biden on race again, but she very well could be. And it's interesting that Booker is on the other side of Biden, and Booker has also gone after Biden several times during the debate. And Booker is a very charismatic character in this entire saga, and he's really looking for that breakout moment. So expect Booker and Harris really to pile up on Biden because they're both trying to break out, and they have experienced, especially Harris, bumps in the polls, but they haven't broken in too much to Biden's lead yet.
Clarence, you know, as far as the president is concerned, it seems like this week he's kind of gone back and forth on his stance of the send her back chant that some of his supporters were chanting earlier this week at his rally. How do you see this?
Well, I looked at, in fact, we were talking beforehand about Ron Brownstein over at The Atlantic had a really interesting piece in their magazine, a study of the polls looking at which voters make a difference. There's about 15% swing voters that we're down to. Everybody's made up their minds already. But among that group, the most interesting group right now is those who appreciate Trump's economy, give him high marks on that and low marks on everything else. They tend to be the kind of voters who voted for Obama twice and then voted for Trump. Well, that group there is the one that I think our consultants are going to be targeting. And what we're finding is that those that the economy is the big issue with them. And Trump doesn't have anything else to offer right now that moves those voters as much as the race issue. And that's what you're seeing in action right now with his little war against these 4 freshmen.
Do you think that the send her back chant, do you think this could come back to hurt him on the campaign trail?
Well, it helps him with some people. When that first occurred, I think it's Ipsos did a poll that found his numbers among his own supporters, or excuse me, his numbers among Republicans. He gained 5 points. However, he lost among Democrats, predictably. But that's what I'm talking about, though. When he brings up that any issue like that, having to do with immigration, with an external threat, or American culture, this is the way Mitch McConnell put it, what is an American? That's going to be the big question for Republicans.
Dangerous strategy for the president here?
You know, I think it's a strategy he's used to. I mean, he launched his campaign in 2015 on building a wall against a foreign country, referring to Mexican immigrants as rapists and drug runners and such. But, you know, it may work with his base, but it's going to provide some difficulties when it comes to getting that suburban, tends to be white, college-educated woman that might have voted for Romney in 2012 and Obama in 2016, might have voted for Romney, then flipped to Obama, and then is like more so moving left as we go on.
Clarence, this past week has opened up a lot of conversation about race. In the past several weeks, I've been talking to people who have older African Americans who have said that race relations are worse today than they were 50, 60 years ago. One was the president of the SCLC, another was a family member. You've written a lot about stuff. You've lived through the civil rights movement. So how do you see race
Almost
relations
all of it,
today?
yes.
Yeah, so how do you see it? Are things...
20 years ago, I did a book on race, a collection of essays, and older black folks were saying the same thing then, that things are worse now than they were before. But that's hyperbole. The fact is, obviously, we have more rights and opportunities. We have a black president now since I wrote that book. But that doesn't mean that we're in a post-racial society. I kept calming everybody who said, wait a minute, let's not get too excited, because the issues are still there underneath. And that's what we see Donald Trump bringing out right now. He's taking advantage of what he sees as a vast group of folks in the country, mostly white, not all white, but folks who feel like they haven't been listened to, the same way black folks felt like they weren't being listened to for all these years. And what we find is that when black Americans are optimistic about the future, white Americans tend to be a little less optimistic about it, and vice versa. So we're in that kind of stage now where I'm hearing a lot of black folks say, hey, things are worse than they ever were. No, they weren't worse than they ever were. But what I find is black folks aren't as shocked by Donald Trump's election as my white friends are. And so I think there's more than a racial gap. There's a gap of understanding in the country. Everybody tends to judge the whole country by their own experience.
Sure.
And that's a mistake.
Well, I'm sure we're going to have to continue this conversation much more along the campaign of 2020.
So,
yeah. Well, Julia, Clarence, thanks so much, and we'll be right back after the break.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
It has the power to influence weight loss, boost your immune system, and improve brain function.
We've seen an explosion of data on the role of the gut microbiome in health.
The free Build a Better Gut booklet reveals the latest information about the gut microbiome. You'll discover how your gut affects the rest of your health.
The gut microbiome has been linked to depression and cancer and heart disease.
Learn how to build a stronger, healthier gut.
The microbiome, if it's in good composition, are really protecting us all the time from more invasive things.
Get the Build a Better Gut booklet, free from the Christian Broadcasting Network. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut.
You need to make sure that your microbes are working with you, not against you.
And if you order online, you'll get immediate access to the Build a Better Gut series, a digital copy of the booklet, and related bonus material. Build a Better Gut today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut for your free copy.
Here, we're committed to a heritage of rigorous scholarship dating back over 1,000 years.
And to a faith tradition dating back 1,000 more.
This is how we create a culture of inquiry where no topic is off limits.
And a culture of hope.
Anything's possible!
It's Christian leadership.
And it's changing the world for the better.
It's higher learning.
It's greater knowing.
It's what makes us whole.
It's what makes us Regent.
Welcome back. A new White House policy is the subject of growing criticism. New asylum rules block some legitimate asylum seekers from entering the United States. This week's State Department Ministerial to Advance Religious Freedom called on the world's leaders to fight against religious persecution, a reality that forces many to flee in the first place. CBN's David Brody pressed Secretary of State Pompeo on that very issue.
You know, we're still the most generous, welcoming nation anywhere in the world. Our objective has been to try and do what those people really want in most cases, which is just to stay in their own country. So our approach for Christians in the Middle East and for other people who are being religiously persecuted around the world, our mission set has been to try and create the conditions inside their own country so that they can have that religious freedom. There'll be no need to leave their country, their friends, their people, their church, their synagogue, their mosque, all the things that they know and love and that their grandparents know and love. And that's our aim. It's one of the purposes of this ministerial this week.
And after that interview, Politico reported that the Trump administration is considering shutting down its refugee resettlement program. Combined with the administration's new asylum rule, it could dramatically affect our borders. Reporter Heather Sells has been following this, and she joins us now. Heather, who is speaking out on this, the latest news?
Yes, I put out a query on Twitter today, and I heard from a lot of pastors who are really concerned about this. I also heard from Christian faith-based groups like World Relief, the National Latino Evangelical Coalition, and Bethany Christian Services told me about a group I hadn't thought about. Those are unaccompanied refugee children. This year there's 133 in the U.S., and Bethany is caring for half of them. So if this goes into effect, if we say no refugees coming into the U.S., it's going to affect a lot of people, including refugee children.
Heather, any chance the White House could change its mind here?
It's possible. I mean, no one really knows why this story was leaked to Politico, but the White House has until October 1st, the start of the new fiscal year, to decide how it's going to handle refugees for the coming year. And so there is a little bit of time, and it'll be interesting to see who pushes back against this idea that's been floated.
Yeah, definitely. Well, when you combine this possible change in our refugee program along with the new asylum rule, Heather, what does it really mean for the U.S. and our borders?
Right. I think a lot of people are spinning this week with all of this news that's happening. The asylum rule still could be shot down in court, so no one knows exactly what's going to happen with that, but that has the potential to dramatically lower the number of people coming in and at the southern border. And then when you look at this refugee situation, if we cap it at 0, that means no refugees would come into the U.S. next year, and admitting refugees is a multi-year process. So if we want to start it up again, it would be several years to start it up again. So potentially we could really be dramatically closing our borders here.
All right, Heather Sells, thanks for being with us.
You're welcome.
And we'll be right back after the break.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family, life in your finances, life in your body, mind, and spirit, life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com. Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs, from health to entertainment, you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place, from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Check your local listings or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel. Now available at cbnradio.com.
Well, on July 20th, 1969, man first stepped foot on the moon.
And while marking a triumph for science, God also kept coming up on the missions to the moon. CBN's Paul Strand brings us that often untold part of the story.
Getting to and landing on the moon may have been one of mankind's greatest accomplishments, but the astronauts who reached it didn't leave God out of the picture.
Historian William Federer points to the Apollo 11 moonwalkers.
Before they get out of the lunar module, they have a moment of silence, and Buzz Aldrin celebrates communion. He pours the grape juice in 1/6 gravity, and it does a slow little circle, and he reads John 15, I'm the vine, you are the branches, and he takes bread that was partly consumed at the communion service before he launched. He saved a piece of the bread, and he celebrated communion. So the first items that were consumed on the moon was communion.
The world didn't hear it because a famous atheist had given NASA grief over Apollo 8 astronauts publicly reading from the Bible.
Madalyn Murray O'Hair had threatened to sue because Apollo 8 had mentioned God. They read from the book of Genesis.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
As Apollo 11 headed back to Earth, Buzz Aldrin said this to a listening world.
Reflecting on the events of the past several days, a verse from Psalms comes to mind. When I consider the heavens, the work of thy fingers, and the moon and the stars which thou hast ordained, what is man that thou art mindful of him?
9 months later, when an accident on board Apollo 13 might have doomed its 3 astronauts to die in space, much of the planet turned to God.
President Nixon calls the nation to pray. And they have prayer on the Chicago Board of Trade and the Vatican and the Wailing Wall all around the world.
Lord, your astronauts will come back safe.
Apollo 6, recovery, over.
The exploration of space has been hazardous adventure. The voyage of Apollo 13 dramatized its risks.
With the crew alive and back on Earth, mankind thanked God.
President Nixon has a national day of Thanksgiving to celebrate this.
One of the last Apollo flights featured Mission Control's Charles Duke getting to walk on the moon. He spoke of it later.
I used to think that, I'm paraphrasing, going to the moon would be the greatest achievement. He says, but my walk with Jesus is more memorable because it's an everyday affair. So just a fascinating faith that Charles Duke had, plus all the astronauts. Jim Irwin became, Apollo 15 became an evangelical minister, and Apollo 14 left a microfilm copy of the King James Bible on the moon.
It's interesting how many of those men who flew far into the heavens couldn't get the God of heaven out of their thoughts. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News.
An American flag riddled with German machine gun bullets is back in the U.S. after 75 years.
The president welcomed the flag home in an acceptance ceremony Thursday at the White House with the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. The American flag flew on the first U.S. invading ship to storm the beaches on D-Day, one of 3 other advanced ships. This was the only one to complete its mission in the chaos of the bloody Normandy landings that led to the Allied defeat of the Nazis in Europe.
Yeah, neat to see.
Neat to see. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation.
Have a great weekend.